Hey Bullets YouTube channel.
Hurry up, now tell us why you're here.
Unfortunately, Dale Earnhardt Jr. will now be out for the season because of a hard practice crash. And Alex Bloman will replace Dale Earnhardt Jr. for the rest of the season. And this will be Alex Bloman's new look for the rest of the season. He's not the only one with a new look. Kane Carafine, as of last race, also had a new look. And this is his new look. And Ace Arrowhead will be replacing Billy Carjoy after he had his season-ending crash. And, as per usual, Ace Arrowhead has a new look. He's going to use this paint scheme when he replaces Billy Carjoy, using his number 100. But the car in the number 103, Jeff Bumpers, has just been fired for poor performances. And Nick Charger will be suspended for 2 races because of illegal fuel. And Ryan Rodages will be out for 3 races because of a hard crash in practice. And then Pitbull Speed Racer and Chad Motorgas would accidentally wreck each other in the last practice session. But there will be a new rookie beginning his Piston Cup racing career this race. We don't know too much about him yet, but Chris Rovertire has quit racing in the Piston Cup after this rookie announced he was racing. And now Ricky Speedhouse Jr., Austin Drafton, David Gillicar, Ronald Clutcher, Michael McDrivewell, Paul Racedraft, Casey Gears, David Stremrim, David Raycar, Lucas Marquez, and Speedson Larson all refused to take part in qualifying. Why? But it's time to get onto the starting grid, where Lightning McQueen will start at pole position with Bobby Swift, who's outside. Row 2 has Cal Weathers and Jimmy Cables, who's currently 5th in points. Row 3 has Speedy Comet and Martin Carrix Jr., who's hoping to have a better race than last week's race. Row 4 has Brick Yardley and Phil Tankson, who's outside. I wonder how they'll do this race. Row 5 has Rex Revler and Matthew Overdrive, who has high hopes for this race. Row 6 has Dino Draftsky and Todd Marcus to his outside. And in row 7, we've got Kevin Carvick, who's hoping to have a better race, and Morik Lutchburn to his outside. Row 8 has Ralph Carlo and the jumper, Doug Throttleman, who hasn't been doing too well these last few races. And row 9 has Carl Clutchin and Chip Gearings, hoping to get his first win. Row 10 has Jack DePost and Buck Beeringly, making his 4th start this season. Row 11 has Brian Sparks and Ricky Axel, who has 1 win this season. Row 12 has Floyd Movelhill and Reb Meeker to his outside. I wonder how they'll do this race. Row 13 has Marcus Kranksler and Kyle Carson to his outside, the second number 42 car. And row 14 has TG Castlett and Darren Leadfoot, both have won Piston Cup races. And row 15 has Ernie Gearson and Bobby Rotesta, both hoping to finish on the lead lap this race. Row 16 has Tony Gassworth and Lane Locke, who did very well in practice. Row 17 has the Gearson Motorsports teammates Jamarcus Takart and owner James Gearson. Row 18 has Terry Cargis, who was very aggressive during practice, and Tommy Highbanks. Row 19 has Bruce Miller and Rev Rodages, hoping to finish on the lead lap yet again. Row 20 has Ponchi Wipeout and Dirksen D'Agostino to his outside. Row 21 has a pair of 2 cars making their first start this season, Dominic Carcycle and the rookie. Row 22, starting in 43rd, is Parker Breakston, beating these 13 cars, among many others, to qualify for this race. Now to the race, where Lightning McQueen would lead the first 8 laps of the race before losing the lead to Cal Weathers, who would lead until lap 14. But he would lose the lead to Bobby Swift, who would lead for 5 laps. But on lap 19, Dominic Carcycle would have an engine failure, and now he's out. Lightning McQueen would take the lead after the restart and lead until lap 25, where he'd lose the lead to Bobby Swift, who would lead until lap 28. But then, Lightning McQueen would strike back and take the lead on lap 28, and then lead until lap 33, where Cal Weathers would take the lead once again But 2 laps later, Lightning McQueen would retake the lead. He would lead for 10 more laps before losing the lead to Brick Yardley, who would lead his first 2 laps of the race. But Terry Kargas would be 32nd as of lap 46. When he wrecks, who does he wreck? Kevin Carvick, Martin Carx Jr., James Garrison, and Jamarcus Cakehart. I feel bad for all 4 of them. Lightning McQueen would take the lead after the restart and lead until lap 55, where Bobby Swift would take the lead once again and lead for 2 more laps before Cal Weathers would take the lead off of pit cycles on lap 57. Later that lap, Lightning McQueen would retake the lead, leading the field until lap 58, where Cal Weathers would retake the lead. He would lead until lap 61, where Rev Rodages would take the lead. He would only lead for a few yards before Cal Weathers would retake the lead. He would lead the field until lap 63, where he'd lose the lead to Bobby Swift, who would lead for 3 more laps until lap 66, where Ricky Axel would take the lead. He would lead for about 30 yards before losing the lead to Tony Gasswort, who would lead for a similar amount of time. But Paunchy Wipeout would be 2nd as of lap 66, where he wrecks. Who does he wreck? He wrecked the leader, Tony Gasswort! Why? And then Bobby Swift would take the lead on lap 67 and lead until lap 76, where Lightning McQueen would retake the lead. He would lead the next 20 laps before Bobby Swift would retake the lead. He would lead for 2 more laps before Cal Weathers will take the lead once again, leading the field past lap 100. But on lap 101, Ralph Carlo would take the lead, and he would lead into the next lap, lap 102, where Ricky Axel would take the lead. He would lead for about 5 yards before Cal Weathers would take the lead. But then, shortly before the lap was over, Jimmy Cables would take the lead, leading the field into lap 103. But just before turn 1, Lightning McQueen would take the lead, leading the field all the way until lap 104, where Bobby Swift would take the lead once again. He would lead for 3 more laps before Lightning McQueen would retake the lead once again, leading until lap 109, where Cal Weathers would once again retake the lead, leading until lap 112, where Dino Draftsky would take the lead off of pit cycles. But after the pit stops were done, Lightning McQueen would retake the lead, leading for 3 more laps. But then Carl Clutchin would take the lead on lap 115, but only for about 6 yards before Lightning McQueen would retake the lead, leading all the way until lap 120, where Bobby Swift would take the lead once again. He would lead for 2 more laps before Brick Yardley would take the lead once again, leading for 4 laps until lap 126, where Cal Weathers would take the lead. He would lead for 9 more laps before Lightning McQueen would take the lead once again. He would go on to lead another 9 laps until lap 144, where Morik Clutchburn would take the lead off of pit cycles. But it would be Phil Takeson who would take the lead after the pit stops were done, leading until lap 146, where Lightning McQueen would take the lead once again. He would lead for 3 more laps before Bobby Swift would take the lead once again, leading for 4 more laps. Lightning McQueen would retake the lead on lap 153, but shortly after taking the lead, Kyle Carson would be out with an engine failure on lap 153. And Marcus Kranksler would take the lead after the restart, but shortly after the green flag waved again, Chip Gearings would take the lead, but he wouldn't lead for long because Buck Beeringly would take the lead on lap 154. And then Todd Marcus would take the lead shortly before turn 3 and lead the field until lap 155, where Lightning McQueen would retake the lead. He would lead until lap 158 before his friend Reb Meeker would take the lead and lead until lap 159, where Lightning McQueen would once again retake the lead. He would lead all the way until lap 170, where Cal Weathers would take the lead. He would lead for 4 more laps before Lightning McQueen would take the lead once again, leading for 2 more laps before Bobby Swift would take the lead once again on lap 176 and lead for 6 more laps before Lightning McQueen would retake the lead. He would lead for 6 more laps before Jimmy Cables would take the lead on lap 188. Shortly after taking the lead, Brick Yardley would take the lead for himself and lead the field until lap 189, where Lightning McQueen would retake the lead. He would lead until lap 195, where Matthew Overdrive would take the lead off of pit cycles. But after the pit stops were done, Lightning McQueen would retake the lead, leading the field until lap 202, where Cal Weathers would retake the lead. he would lead for 2 more laps until lap 203, where Bobby Swift would take the lead once again. But he would only lead for around 15 yards because Cal Weathers would be back in the lead and lead until lap 206. But then Bobby Swift would lose the lead on lap 206 and lead until lap 211, where he'd lose the lead to Lightning McQueen, who would lead for 3 more laps before losing the lead to Brick Yardley, who would lead for 4 laps before Ricky Axel would take the lead himself, leading for 3 laps this time. And then Bobby Swift would retake the lead on lap 221. He would lead for 2 more laps before Reb Meeker would take the lead on lap 223. But under 200 yards later, Jimmy Cables would take the lead and lead the field into lap 224. But on lap 224, Lightning McQueen would retake the lead and lead for 4 more laps before Bobby Swift would retake the lead. He would lead into lap 234, where Cal Weathers would take the lead once again, and he would lead for 2 laps. But then, on lap 235, Brick Yardley would take the lead once again. Just under 100 yards later, Lightning McQueen would retake the lead, leading the field all the way until lap 240, where Bobby Swift would retake the lead once again, and he would lead for 9 more laps, and Ricky Axel would take the lead off of pit cycles on lap 249. But as a result of the pit cycles, Ernie Gearson would go down 1 lap. Same with Lane Locke. Now they are a lap down. And Lightning McQueen would take the lead on lap 249 and lead another 7 laps on lap 255. Lane Locke would get back on the lead lap, and this would allow for Matthew Overdrive to take the lead and lead for 2 more laps. But then Lightning McQueen would be back in the lead on lap 257 and lead for 1 more lap until lap 258, where Bobby Swift would take the lead once again, leading for 4 more laps. And on lap 260, Ernie Gearson would be back on the lead lap, which would cause many Piston Cup fans to cheering on the Piston Cup's current oldest competitor. And Cal Weathers would take the lead on lap 262, but 5 laps later, Lightning McQueen would be back in the lead, leading for 2 more laps. But Speedy Comet would take the lead on lap 269 and lead for 8 laps before Lightning McQueen would be back in the lead on lap 277. But on lap 281, Speedy Comet would be back in the lead, and he would lead for 8 more laps before Bobby Swift would take the lead for himself on lap 289. But on lap 294, Lightning McQueen would take the lead once again, leading all the way until lap 318, where Phil Tankson would take the lead off of pit cycles. But it would be Brick Yardley who would take the lead after the pit stops were done. But Lightning McQueen would take the lead soon after Brick Yardley took it and lead until lap 321, where Bobby Swift would take the lead once again and lead for 10 more laps before Jimmy Cables would take the lead briefly for about 100 yards, before Cal Weathers would take the lead once again, leading the field into lap 332. But Lightning McQueen would take the lead shortly before turn 1, leading all the way until lap 339, when Reb Meeker would take the lead. He wouldn't lead for long though, because Brian Sparks would take the lead. He wouldn't lead for very long either, as Marcus Cranksler would take the lead. He would lead until about turn 4, where Bobby Swift would take the lead once again and lead until lap 348. Lightning McQueen would take the lead on lap 348 and lead for 10 more laps before Bobby Swift would take the lead once again, leading for 2 more laps before Cal Weathers would take the lead on lap 360. Shortly after taking the lead, Rev Rodages would retake the lead. He would lead just off of turn 2, and then Rex Revler would take the lead and lead the field until lap 363, where Bobby Swift would take the lead once again, leading for 3 more laps before Lightning McQueen would take the lead on lap 366, leading for 3 more laps. And then Bobby Swift would take the lead on lap 369, leading until lap 374, where Matthew Overdrive would take the lead off of pit cycles. But after the pit stops were done, Bobby Swift would retake the lead, leading for 4 more laps, and Lightning McQueen would take the lead on lap 378, leading until lap 390, where Darren Leadfoot would surprisingly take the lead. But shortly after taking the lead, Carl Clutchin would take the lead, taking the lead around turn 2. But just before turn 3, Lightning McQueen would be back in the lead. And then on lap 391, Rev Rodages would retake the lead. But 50 yards later, Lightning McQueen would be back in the lead. But he wouldn't lead for very long, as Bobby Swift would retake the lead. he would lead for 6 more laps before Lightning McQueen would take the lead on lap 397 and take the white flag. Now onto the commentary. Bob Cutlass says, another great finish in the making. McQueen and Swift, nose to nose. Then Lightning McQueen says, how's the view back there, Bobby? Now what does Bobby Swift have to say? He says, you better not blink. I'll blow right past you. And then, back to the commentary where Bob Cutlass says the flag is out and it's the final stretch. McQueen in the lead. Lightning McQueen says, okay, let's see what you got. And then Bobby Swift says, woo-wee! Well, let's see how the race ends. And then the rookie is passing other racers very quickly. And then he takes the lead. Turns out this rookie is Jackson Storm, who looks like this. And he has taken the lead for the very first time in a Piston Cup race, the final lap of the race. And Daryl Cartrip has this to say about Jackson Storm. And then Bob Cutlass says, whoa, it's Jackson Storm for the win. Daryl Cartrip replies, neither Lightning nor Bobby ever saw him coming. And this means Jackson Storm is the winner of the 2016 Dinoco 400. Wait, Jackson Storm won his very first Piston Cup race, only leading 1 lap. How does any racer win any race, their first race, by only leading the final lap? How? And also, Jackson Storm is the very first racer since Jay Roper, who won the very first Piston Cup race, to win his very first Piston Cup race. Lightning McQueen would somehow finish second this race, with Bobby Swift finishing third this race. Cal Weathers would finish fourth, Matthew Overdrive fifth, Rev Rotages sixth, Dirks D'Agostino seventh, Phil Tankson eighth, Dino Draftski ninth, and Jimmy Cables rounding out the top 10. Bobby Rotesta is the last car to finish on the lead lap this race, finishing 36th. And after the race, Michael Cartrip, Ricky Speedhouse Jr., Austin Drafton, David Raycar, David Gillicar, Paul Racedraft, Kane Carafine, Mika Powell, Casey Gears, Ryan Webster, Reed Sorencar, who actually uses this image. I used the wrong image last time that I showed him in one of these videos. David Stremrim, Robert Turner, Ricard Smith, and Bill Racelot have all retired from Piston Cup racing. Bill Racelot, who began his Piston Cup career in 1975, before many of his competitors had even been born, will be bringing an end to his Piston Cup career. I wonder why all of these cars decided to retire now. And here are the standings from the race, with Jackson Storm getting his very first win, and Rev Rotages getting an unlikely top 10. Same with Dirksen D'Agostino. Phil Tankson, Dino Draftski, and Jimmy Cables find it a bit more normal finish in the top 10. Terry Cargus and Carl Clutchin are unlucky to miss out on the top 10. Chip Gearings, Mauric Hutburn, and Ricky Axel, who all led laps this race, round out the top 15. Rex Reveler finishes 16th, Paunchy Wipeout 17th, Parker Breakson surprisingly finishes 18th, ahead of Reb Meeker and Bruce Miller. Speedy Comet earns 100 points this race, finishing 21st, the same as his number. Ernie Gearson finishes on the lead lap, ahead of Brick Yardley. How? Marcus Cranksler finishes 24th, and Tommy Highbanks rounds out the top 25. Brian Sparks and Buck Beeringly all led laps this race. TG Castlenut, Lane Locke, and Darren Ledfoot round out the top 30. Jack DePost and Doug Throttleman both had a bad race this race. Same with Todd Marcus and Ralph Carlo. Floyd Mulvihill is lucky that he finishes on the lead lap. Same with Bobby Rotesta. And unfortunately, all of these cars who finished behind Bobby Rotesta were unlucky to not finish on the lead lap. Better luck next week. And now, here is the top 20 in points, with Lightning McQueen still being in the lead. Brick Yardley is very lucky that he's still ahead of Jimmy Cables in points. Phil Tankson, Kevin Carvick, Martin Karch Jr., James Garrison, and Reb Meeker round out the top 10. Carl Clutchin is unlucky not to be in the top 10, being 10 points behind Reb Meeker. Jack DePost had a bad race, but he is still in the top 12, with TG Castlett, the jumper Doug Throttleman, and Ricky Axel rounding out the top 15. Maury Clutchburn is in 16th, followed by Kyle Carson, Dale Earnhardt Jr., who can't race anymore this season due to his season-ending crash, Rex Revler, and Jamarcus Cakart, who is just ahead of Todd Marcus in 21st. And now, we're going to go on to the talk show of Chick's Picks with Chick Hicks. And guess who the host is? It is the Mean Green Car, Chick Hicks! Why did RSN let this guy have his own talk show? And here's what the Mean Green Car had to say. He's just looking for an excuse to make fun of Lightning McQueen. Lightning McQueen is a much greater Piston Cup racer than you will ever be. But he invited a special guest onto his talk show. And this guest is statistical analyst Natalie Certain, who talks about how Jackson Storm is actually different because he is a next generation racer, unlike all of the other racers who are stock cars. And wait, there's more next generation racers? Well, this video's already been pretty long. Let's get on to the outro.
Remember to press the notifications button, which goes ring, ring, ring after you press it. And lightning strikes back, and that's as if you subscribed, of course. And thank you for watching this entire video.
Next generation racers! You mean there are race cars racing in the Piston Cup who are not stock cars? And also, why did they have to be introduced in the middle of the season? And there's more next generation racers? What will this mean for all the current Piston Cup racers? No wonder all of the Academy racers don't look like stock cars anymore. But this is not fair. But don't forget that Piston Cup officials aren't exactly known for being fair. And stay tuned for the next race of the 2016 Piston Cup season. That video will be coming out soon enough. Let's see what happens then. And you've seen this guy before, right? He is a next-gen racer. And if you watched the 1,000th subscriber special, you would know that this is me before I entered the Piston Cup. But I've still got something to say, as unfortunately, the 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine is still going on, with many worrying about drones destroying their property. The Ukrainian people just want to live in peace and have freedom, but this common dream was ruined by the tyrant and bully, Vladimir Putin. Currently, Vladimir Putin's tyranny rules around 1/5 of Ukraine's land, including Crimea, the Donbass, and parts of the Kharkiv, Zaporizhia, and Kherson Oblast. It could be worse, but Vladimir Putin doesn't have everything going his way, as Ukraine controls parts of Russia's Kursk Oblast, and now needs North Korea's help to try to save them. But every day, it gets harder for Ukraine to win the war because of dwindling supplies. The lack of supplies is leading to Putin making small gains in Ukraine and pushing Ukrainian control out of the Kursk Oblast. We here at the K.A. Bullets Piston Cup YouTube channel stand with Ukraine in their struggle against Vladimir Putin's tyranny and recognize Ukraine's true borders as shown by this map, which includes all of the land that Vladimir Putin has taken illegally. My message to Ukraine is to not give up. Don't let the tyrant Vladimir Putin have his way. Slava Ukraini! Heroyam slava! Nechai shvite daruється Україні перемога! Glory to Ukraine! Glory to the heroes. May Ukraine be granted victory very soon. In only a few weeks, this war would have lasted 3 years. We hope that this victory comes sooner rather than later.